2, 1.
Together, we are unlocking potential. Welcome to this episode from Red Door Pediatric Therapy, where we share stories and strategies of functional, behavioral, emotional, and social development in children today. We're glad you're here, and we can't wait to get started.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome back to Unlocking Potential. We are here today with a great friend of mine and an excellent speech language pathologist, Linaya Ming. How's it going, Linaya?
It's going great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I had a moment there. I wanted to use your maiden name. I've known you so long. Sometimes that maiden name pops into my brain, but so happy to have you here today talking about early intervention. This is a topic that's near and dear to our hearts because we work with kids, and early intervention, that early word we really refer to as after they're born and then up to about age 5 before they head off to kindergarten. So we obviously meet a lot of tiny people in this age range coming into our doors and bringing smiles to our faces. And we're very passionate about getting them in the doors at this age because of all the just wonderful things that can happen in this window. So let's maybe start there, thinking about that age birth to 5. You know, why is that amount of time or those years? Why are they so important and so special?
Yeah. So at birth, a child's brain is really a work in progress, right? It develops as they experience the world through their senses, through seeing, through hearing, through tasting, through touching, and just like smelling the environment. Infants experience things and they learn different things for the first time. And when that happens, our brain makes these neural connections. Right. And so the more times that those experiences are repeated, the stronger those connections get. If the experience is not repeated, those connections are kind of removed. So as children begin to experience things, their brain starts to, really make those connections. So kids with developmental delays, sometimes the wiring in their brain puts the neurons together in a way that is kind of unhelpful to them, which lends them to struggle with communication, lends them to struggle with social skills and other activities. So, during this time frame, the brain is really at the most crucial part for making a change in adaptation.
I love that description. You say that they're experiencing all of these things for the very first time. And, I think back to kids that I've worked with and my own kids as they, lived through those very special years. So many things happen during that time. And you almost see their eyes light up and you almost see, oh my gosh, I did that for the first time. Or, even the first time you put them in the grass outside in the summertime, or it snows and you take them outside, you just see like the reaction on their face for those new experiences. Yeah. You did talk too about kids who maybe are struggling a little bit or have some disorders and do get into therapy. Are there any diagnoses that this is especially important for, like getting them in early, getting some therapy or intervention during those first 5 years?
Yeah, I think, kids who are maybe born premature, their sensory systems are not developed yet. And so sometimes they just need a little bit more assistance to get those sensory systems working together to make sense of the world around them. So I oftentimes think of kids who are born premature. I also think of kids, who are maybe lacking a little bit in some joint attention skills. Maybe kids who are showing some signs or symptoms of autism spectrum disorders, kids who are showing an increased difficulty with attention, difficulty with feeding, and those kinds of kids.
Those are some great examples. We work with a lot of kids with apraxia speech too, don't we? I always feel like that's another population for, at least in the speech world, that getting them in early is really important. And they're usually identified early because of their, lack of language. They're not really talking. We're not meeting milestones. And we'll talk about some milestones here next. Let's segue into that. So birth to 5, it's very busy during that time. Even just that after birth to that age 1, they're doing so many things. And we talk a lot about the motor milestones of, sitting up and supporting their head and crawling, and then eventually pulling to stand and walking and all of that. But we're going to really talk about the language and communication milestones today, because that's our area of expertise during this time. So let's talk about some just really major significant milestones that we can, as parents and providers and educators, be watching out for during this time.
Yeah, so one of the earliest is joint attention. So sharing mutual experiences with your child. Oftentimes this starts very, very early, as early as when you're starting to feed your baby, either nursing or from the bottle, you're sharing this experience together. And so shared experience is just drawing their attention to an object or an event. So we really look at joint attention right away in the beginning, and then their just response to you. You start to see them smile or coo or start to babble. And so those are some of the really early ones.
That's such a fun age. I just think of like breastfeeding and bottle feeding. Like they just like pull off and they look at you. Like that's joint attention, right? You're there, they're there, they're with you. They're not distracted. You don't feel like they're in another world. You're really sharing that experience together. You're having your own little moment. That's so fun.
Yeah. And then as they start to get older, we want to look at how are their words developing? How are they talking? Are they using a variety of words, not just labels for objects? That's what we would expect to see first, like ball, puppy. But we want to start to see them include more like action verbs: eat, drink, run, walk, sit. Start to use some color words, start to use some size words, maybe some shape. So by 2 years of age, we want to see about 50 words in their vocabulary, a variety of words.
Yeah, I love that milestone. We talk about that milestone all the time, 50 words by age 2. And they don't have to be perfect, right? Like they don't even have to sound anything like the real word, but they have meaning and they're consistently the same for that. When they make that sound, they're referring to that. And we tell parents, I guess everybody's using their phones these days, make a list on your phone. But I always used to tell parents, put a list on the fridge. It doesn't have to be fancy. And then anytime you hear it and then you hear it again and maybe again, then it's consistently there and add to that list. I think sometimes people come in and they say, they maybe only have 15 words. But when you actually start generating a list, you can surprise yourself with how many words they are saying.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. For sure.
Big one. And is it still the first word kind of by that first year birthday, right?
Yep. One true word by 1 year old.
Yep. And mom and dad will fight. Is it going to be mom or is it going to be dad?
Yep. My kids was dad.
That's so fun. But yeah, make a list. And then once they've reached those 50 words, that's pretty much when they are ready to start combining for some phrases.
We say, by 2, once they have those 50 words, then we start looking at 2-word utterances, between 2 and 3. And then some 3-word phrases kind of by 3, some 4-word phrases by 4. You kind of get where I'm going here. So that's kind of how we expect those milestones to go for 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay. And as they're talking more and using longer phrases, they can be more difficult to understand, can kind of jumble together. When should we understand their speech as parents? Familiar listeners, we know their patterns, not that they have perfect speech, but when should you pretty much get everything they're saying?
By 5 years of age, 5th birthday for sure, 100% across all communication partners, mom, dad, teacher, aunt, uncle, grandma. So by their 5th birthday.
Okay. Now they're before kindergarten and in that early intervention time span, they're just doing so much. Okay. Those were some great milestones to watch out for. Let's move on. I want to talk about hearing. I want to talk about ear health and communication development during this early intervention phase of birth to 5. We have a lot of people who call us and walk through our doors who are concerned about language development, obviously. But when we start to ask them some questions about history, medical history, developmental history, we hear about ear infections. We ask specifically about that because of the potential connection to language development. So I want to make a point to talk about that with you today. A lot of kids have ear infections during this time, but how can those ear infections affect their hearing acuity or their ability to hear and potentially then their language development?
Yeah. So ear infections is essentially fluid in the ears, right? So when I explain this to parents during my evaluations, I think about, the game you played when you were little in the swimming pool, right? You go under the water and you and your friends are like, guess which word I'm saying? And you have to try and figure out what they're saying through the water. So essentially, that is kind of how it sounds to kids who have a history of ear infections. They have that fluid in the water. And so they're hearing things very, very inaccurately. So sounds are impacted, the words are impacted, they're missing words, missing sounds. So that is kind of, very crucial and important when we are thinking about kids who have history of chronic ear infections.
Yeah. And, my kids have had them over the years, and some kids have a high pain tolerance. I mean, ear infections, sometimes they hurt, sometimes they don't. So I think even some kids have undiagnosed, unidentified ear infections, or the infection is once that fluid gets to a point where it's growing bacteria and we maybe get some pus or inflammation in there. But that fluid, that residual fluid, can remain after the ear infection has been resolved and still, have the effects of hearing loss, though temporary hearing loss. That can be pretty detrimental during these years. And if they have the residual fluid that won't resolve on its own, what can they do about it after that? Do you refer to tell us what they can do to help get rid of that fluid if it's.
So we usually tell them to go see their primary care physician and request a referral to an ENT. So the ENT ear, nose, and throat doctor will schedule that appointment and will look in their ears and kind of make the decision from there if their child is appropriate for tubes or if it's kind of like, well, we'll wait and see. And so that's kind of the route that we take: primary care physician and then ENT follow-up.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that. I think a lot of families, we see a lot of families that get those tubes. They call them kids with tubes, to keep that fluid out and to keep the hearing acuity where it needs to be and help with the language development and to eliminate the need for antibiotics and all of that.
Yes.
Okay, very good. So let's talk about next. What are some things that we can do? This birth to 5 time is so special. So we really want to be bombarding their little systems with everything that we can to, maximize on their brain growth and all of the magic things happening up there. And we do so many things as parents naturally without even trying, I think. But, as experts and really facilitators of the language, let's talk about some just strategies and things parents can try today with their kids, whether they're in therapy already or not in therapy and just developing on track. These are just great strategies and tools to grow language and make your home a language-rich environment.
Yeah, I think one of the easiest ones as a parent that we, like Steph said, we do probably naturally and don't really realize that it is a intervention, so to speak, or a strategy, would be self-talk. So that just essentially is saying what you're doing while doing it. I oftentimes think of like when we're going up the stairs, saying up, up, up. We're going up, up, up the stairs, and just kind of, again, just saying what you're doing while you're doing it, while your child is also right there with you. I think repetitive books and songs are also really, really great because they're being exposed to the same phrases over and over. You can start to leave off some words and see if they'll fill them in. I think a brown bear. What do you see? I see. And wait for them to kind of fill in the blank.
Kids love that stuff. Kids love that.
Oh, yeah. Or songs too. Songs are a good one too. Once they start to get familiar, you can kind of leave off a word here or there, see if they can start to fill in those words. Those are some easy ones. Verbal routines, I think of ready, set, go. 1, 2, 3. Those are the good ones too. And the +1 routine. This one is probably one of my favorites as a speech therapist. So you take what the kid is saying. So if they say one word, then you're modeling it back to them, but you're adding a word to it. So if they say,
Yes.
oh, I might model, or maybe I'll model red ball so that they're kind of getting exposed to some more language in a smaller utterance length. So then the hope is that they will repeat that back. And then their utterances will get longer and longer too. So that's probably one of my favorite ones.
That's a great one, and so easy, and like less pressure for them because it's only one extra word. And as a mom, I think I ask questions, what color is this? How many bears are there? I really tend to ask the question versus just commenting or kind of summarizing what they say, and that +1 rule, like you said. So this one was a really good one for me as a parent. You definitely switch roles when you're in therapy versus being at home. So question. Gosh, don't do that. Try to just do more commenting. And like you said, that +1, that one was a really favorite of mine too with my kids at home.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, very cool. I love that one. And books too. I think we always hear a lot about books, but that's just a really great one to put into your routine. And don't worry if your kid wants to read the same book over and over, right? Like that repetition is really great for them too. I mean, exposure to new things is great, but repeating, and then they'll sit down and they'll eventually read it to you, which is a special moment for sure. And talking about those routines, we always try, if we give homework or call it what you want, to make it something very easy that you're already doing. It shouldn't feel like extra at this age. It should just maybe be approaching an experience a little bit with a different mindset. Like you're doing the bath. You got to do the bath. You're already in there, and you're probably deprived a little bit. Y'all know kids don't, start sleeping magically at one. And then you're talking about these things, you're adding that vocabulary, you're singing a song and doing all that while you're already doing your daily chores and things that you already need to do. It's just so easy to make the experience a little bit richer and really take advantage of that time. So
yeah.
Well, Linaya, that you've just shared so many wonderful things today. You're such a wealth of knowledge. It was just a treat to have you on. Thank you for sharing about this special time, birth to 5. It is important. Don't wait and see. Yeah, take advantage of it at home or while you can. And if you think your child maybe is a little bit behind where they should be, it's really easy to reach out to a professional and get another opinion. And even if the opinion is, gosh, things are looking marvelous and everything is on track, it feels really good. And then you go home and you don't have to have that worry anymore. So appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for unlocking potential with us. And a special thanks to our subscribers. Consider becoming one today. Unlocking Potential is a production of Red Door Pediatric Therapy with clinics in Fargo, Bismarck, Grand Forks, Minot, and Beulah. Learn more and book your free screening at reddoorpediatric.com.